Thank you, Carol, and good morning, everyone. It's so good to see everyone and be here with you all this morning. As Carol mentioned, my name is Dominique Samari, and I have the pleasure and privilege of moderating this morning's panel of amazing leaders and award winners. First, I want to say thank you to Milwaukee Magazine for hosting the Unity Awards and recognizing the individuals in our city who are doing this important and amazing work. And I want to congratulate all of the Unity Award winners. I am really, really excited to chat with you guys this morning. So we are all living in a historic time, a global pandemic, economic uncertainty, racial tensions, and a nation divided and challenged at every turn. In the face of these challenges, the extraordinary leaders being honored this morning are working, each in their own unique ways, to create common ground, build community, and bring us together to envision a better Milwaukee. We are all very excited to learn about the awardees and their work. So I'd like to start out with our conversation this morning, introducing each awardee and having them share a little bit about how they, in their own unique way, build bridges across our community. Tania, I'm gonna start with you. Tenia Fisher is an accomplished distance runner whose F.E.A.R program, Forget Everything and Run, aims to give people of color a welcoming and safe support group to participate in their favorite sport. Tania says it makes a huge difference to run with a group of people who look like you, a group of people who literally have your back. Tania, you're deeply involved in Social X MKE, which is a diversity and inclusion consulting group that connects young African-American leaders in our community. And it was through your engagement in Social X that you started F.E.A.R. So F.E.A.R is like a community inside of a community. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in the sense of community that you get from being a runner and being amongst individuals that have that shared experience?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So good to see everyone this morning. Running is unlike any other sport. It is very out there. Anybody driving past can place judgment on you if you are running. They can think you are slow, you are fast, maybe your form isn't good, your arms aren't pumping fast enough, your knees aren't lifting high enough. So it is very brave, and a lot of my members have a lot of courage to be able to get out there and run together. Running is also a sport where we are all doing the same exact thing at the same time. We all ran up that hill, we all ran the same distance, and that is something incomparable to any other sport. We all experience the same thing. So that's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes us connected. Now add in F.E.A.R, we are mostly people of color running in Milwaukee, on Lake Drive, in Shorewood, in River West, on Martin Luther King Drive. And we are showing Milwaukee that we can be diverse and people of color care about their health. So could you imagine all of that being put together? You have no other choice but to be connected and to be a family. So fighting those barriers in the running community already, that diversity is not celebrated and is not represented. F.E.A.R is there to change that motion and bridge that gap. And that brings that connectivity, that brings that family. And I'm not saying family as just to say we're family. We eat together, we cook together. They don't let me cook, I don't cook, but they cook, we have breakfast together, all of that. And that's what makes it a family. And when you have a family and you can trust each other to have your back, front, and side to side, you can change the world. Believe me, you can change the world.
I love that, Tania. I've never really thought of all of the vulnerability that's associated with running, but I love how you describe that and how though there's an individual and collective vulnerability, that by running together, you kind of demonstrate the strength and support of each other that lets you kind of shine to the community. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Jose. Hey, Jose, good morning. Jose Trejo is principal of South Division High School, where more than half of the student body are English language learners. It's a perfect setting for Trejo, who has dedicated his career to ensuring people immigrating to Milwaukee have equal rights to education. In support of his vision, Trejo has recently created a new honors education track in MPS for South students interested in becoming teachers. That's amazing. Jose, as a high school principal, when you think about building a real sense of community across Milwaukee, what is the role of the school in helping create a sense of community that extends beyond the walls of the school and beyond the students?
Hi, so good morning, everybody, and congratulations to everyone on the call. So I do think that schools can be a hub for community activity. I'm lucky enough to work in a school where really the school has become the hub of the community. We have just a variety of different partnerships that we've been able to build over the years and strengthen, and that really helps bring the community into South Division so that we can support them. So we have, for example, GD and ESL classes during the day for adults through an organization called Literacy Services that we've partnered with. We offer after school ESL programs for adults as well. We have a college and career center within the building that really provides support for high school students in the community. We also have like a clothing program that provides the community with any items that they need in regards to clothing or any other items. We have a recreation program after school that's very active. As a school, we also host a variety of soccer leagues, a variety of tournaments over the weekend. We also have just a whole variety of community events that we host. One of the biggest ones that we have is actually, it's called Breakfast with Santa, which brings over 2,000 people, into the building through that event with that partnership with the UMOS that we have. So in reality, South is open usually 6 to 7 days a week, most of the day, and that's huge because it allows the community, different people from the community, to come in and really interact with each other and really, work and support one another that way.
Thank you, Jose. So you guys recognize that the student just doesn't exist alone in the world. They exist in the context of a family and of a community. And you really have a holistic approach to like how you support everything and everybody that surrounds that student. That's amazing. Thank you. Good morning, Alita. Alita Cardos Whaley draws from a broad range of coalition building grassroots action. They helped to organize Ayuda Mutua, MKE, which has extended lifelines to Milwaukeeans since COVID-19 set in, as well as coordinating maker markets, food shares, doula training, talk circles, homeschool co-ops, fundraising for laborers, and cultural performance, amongst many, many other things. Alita, I love how you describe yourself as a cultural web worker. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and why it was important to you to create a new term to describe what you do in the world?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Hey, everybody. um, my, I'm so grateful to be here and have already heard, things that resonate with me deeply about community and relationships, and that is the work that I am dedicated and passionate about. It's our people and restoring our relation to one another, to all of our relatives, to the earth, to all that is around us. And that's really connected to this, how I have come to find this word. I'm also a person that works with words. And so those are, important to me. And also I acknowledge that in the English language, we don't always have all the words that express all the things. And so we can manipulate them and make new words, and we always are. Our BIPOC communities, our young people are always doing that. It's incredible. And so a cultural web worker really speaks to me, to the aspect of culture. We are the culture, we're the living culture, we are reproducing culture, recreating every day. And that's going back as far as, all of our 10,000s of ancestors, and that we are the web work. We are creating those systems that are, think of like the spider web, think of the weavings, think of the hammock, think of tapestries. We create that, and that is community building. And my role in community is very much one of service. So acknowledging that I am, I'm held by and in commitment to. It's a humble honor to serve my community, and I've always felt that part of my gift is bringing folks, to the gathering space, to the circle, and holding that space, and whatever may unfold, we're doing it together. And that is just so special and so sacred. And I've been a part of doing that through poetry, through, birth work and circles with parents, with children that we call little elders, through sports, through so many avenues. And it's really, the word that resonates with me a lot is kinship, and bringing restore to our ways that we are in kinship with one another. And like Tania said, that is the way, like, everything is possible when we have one another. We're so resilient and strong.
Thank you. I think that's the theme of our conversation so far this morning, is that we are all connected and we are stronger and better together. Thank you so much, Alita. Now, one of my favorite Milwaukeeans, Pardeep Kalika, has channeled the personal trauma of the 2012 Sikh temple shooting, in which his father, the temple leader, was killed by a white supremacist, into helping heal and bring people together. He's written a book about the healing that followed that experience and is executive director of the Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee and the executive director of the Zeidler Group, a nonprofit working to foster civil dialogue in Milwaukee. Good morning, Pardeep.
Good morning, Dominique, and good morning to everyone. Thank you so much. And again, just humbled and honored to share this award with all of the Milwaukeeans here, Milwaukee Magazine, just for the recognition. And as I was thinking about the theme of today and theme of as we go forward, I can't help but to think that we sit in a very rough time. Not only is it cold outside, but we've gone through this season of the pandemic. It has revealed a lot, the political tension, things that are happening both locally, statewide, and nationally. And just I can't help but to think that there's a spiritual awakening that needs to happen. And I'm lucky to be able to do that with our respective faith partners. When I first came onto Interfaith, I really, and being the first director of color, I really wanted to, and within also thinking about my clinical work, I saw that a lot of my clients really didn't see themselves within faith walls. And I've been lucky enough to work with men who were getting out of the incarceration system, probation, parole, deferred prosecution, people who had gone through sexual assault experiences, other mass shooting survivors, families who have been affected by trauma themselves. And oftentimes I would ask them and ask, do you see yourself walking into a church or a synagogue or a mosque or masjid or gurdwara? And oftentimes they would say no. And they would say no because they felt judged by the faith. They felt rejected by the faith. And I thought to myself, my God, this is the person that needs the scriptures. This is the person that needs this to be there. They need to actually be sitting in the front of the pew, not feeling rejected. So I think my mission going forward is really how do we create a more connected world? How do we help people understand that faith was never supposed to be rejectionist? This country, and that connection is the ultimate important thing to addressing our own personal traumas and our communal traumas. And again, just honored to be here with you all.
Thank you, Pardeep. I love what you said. And I think, there's all this talk about inclusion, but the other side of that coin is exclusion. I feel like for so long, that was the thing to do, to exclude people, to draw lines in the sand. But the more we kind of open up and realize that at our core, it's all the same thing working, that creates space for people to be exactly who they are in this world, and for us to honor and celebrate that thing. Thank you, Pardeep. Nurturing Diversity Partners educates groups about the history, sociocultural dynamics, personal and interpersonal skills, and organizational practices that help build an equitable society. The organization begins difficult conversations with the goal of building trust and sharing in ways that cross racial, ethnic, religious, generational, and other cultural divides. Please help me welcome Reggie Jackson and Fran Kaplan, co-founders of Nurturing Diversity Partners. Good morning, Reggie and Fran.
Good morning, Dominique.
Race is an extremely difficult topic to talk about for most people, especially in Milwaukee, which is so racially segregated. Can you all talk a little bit about why it's so important for us to work up the courage to authentically and honestly engage in conversations about race if we are going to have any shot at building an equitable community?
So I would like to actually question the assumption that people don't talk about race. People talk about race all the time. White people talk about race among themselves, sometimes in disturbing ways, but they do talk. And there's a lot of misinformation exchanged, and what I like to think of as myth information. I'm not lisping, I'm talking about myths. And I would like everyone to question why we're so scared of the humanity of acknowledging the humanity of people who we've traditionally marginalized. Why can't we listen to others, be fair, share our resources, share our status? Because a lot of this is about status in a caste system. If I used to teach parenting education, and what I saw a lot in parents that had been abusive to their children is that their inner child was hurt. And so I think that we need to talk to each other's inner children that are hurt and help them not to be fearful, help them engage in a discussion of fairness, because all kids know what fair is. And, and to start helping people lose their fear, white people in particular, to lose our fear.
Thank you, Fran. Reggie?
I coined this term, I call it an aversion to diversity. We are the most diverse country in the history of the world, yet we have not appreciated that diversity. We have not been a very inclusive society. And much of what we see when Fran and I travel around the state, we travel around the country, are people that think they're divided, but they're really not divided. I think there's this idea that America is so much more divided now than it's ever been. America has always been divided in terms of how people approach and appreciate or don't appreciate people that are different from themselves. I think one of the things that's happened that's been wonderful over the last really 50 to 60 years in this country is that people from marginalized groups have advocated to not be marginalized any longer. People have said that we should be a more inclusive society, and they've done everything to raise awareness of their existence in the society and told people that there's no reason that we shouldn't be accepted like everyone else. And I think what's happening, the vision that we're seeing, is actually people pushing back against that. People saying, no, we don't want to recognize your group. that you belong to. And so part of what Fran and I try to do is to use the historical lens to take people through an authentic journey through American history to see how we've gotten to where we are today. Because a lot of times the conversations that people have about race, racism, things of that nature, any type of marginalization are generally based on just a misapplication of what they've learned about American history in school. We do an absolutely horrible job of teaching history because we leave out all of the ugly parts of American history. And what Fran and I try to do is to bring those things back into the conversation, teach people what really happened in American history so that they can have what I call productive conversations moving forward. And those are conversations that are different than the ones we usually have about race, because now you know what you're talking about. You know the history, you know how we got to where we are, you understand all of the issues with the disparities in our society, you understand those better. And so now you can have the types of conversation that lead to real change that will actually be the type of change that people are actually looking for in our society.
I love that. It is about getting enough courage to tell the truth about who we were so that we can actually like collectively create a new vision for who we can be. I love that. You guys are doing great work in our community. Thank you, Fran and Reggie. And finally, ExFabula is a community nonprofit that believes the art of true personal storytelling can build common ground, understanding, and empathy among people of diverse backgrounds. It has put on more than 600 events across our city with a particular emphasis on centering and elevating the experiences of women, people of color, and those with disabilities. This morning, we have Nicole Acosta, Marketing and Communications Associate, and Michaela Lacey, Community Connector and Radio Show host with us. Good morning, ladies, and congratulations.
Good morning.
You all have supported many, many people in our community in giving voice to their own stories, and you put on an amazing events. We have all been hearing a lot about what both divides and connects us, but what have you all learned from listening to all these stories that you can share about what connects us as individuals?
Hi, good morning. Congratulations, everybody. Again, we believe that storytelling is, well, first of all, storytelling is like probably one of the oldest art forms, if you think about it. It's, you know, hundreds, thousands of years ago, people sitting around fires sharing stories, but oral storytelling is probably like the oldest art form. And so we still do it to this day. We might not realize we're doing it when we're like at tables eating with people, when we're going through an experience and we're looking to just talk to somebody, we're sharing our stories. And most times people are healing when they share their story. And so ExFabula, what we do is, I don't like to say we give space, but we hold space for people to share their stories. And my job and Michaela's job is to kind of amplify the stories of all Milwaukeeans. But what happens in the space is sort of something that's really beautiful that takes place. And it's not something that can always be described with words. We always tell people that you have to come to an event or you have to come to one of our sessions to really experience the feeling of what happens. Because when you hear someone else's story, something might resonate with you, and that allows you to connect with that person. And it's something that someone could be completely different from you, live in a different part of the city, doesn't have anything to do with what your community looks like, but their story you might connect to their story. And so when that happens, you're able to break down these walls that we put up with people and empathize and show compassion and honor someone's difference versus kind of like just, oh no, they don't agree with anything I say. They don't look like me. They don't, they're not in my community, blah, blah, blah. And you allow yourself to kind of like connect with that person just through storytelling.
Thank you, Nicole. Michaela?
Yeah, so to follow that, I think that Nicole summed it up perfectly, but in addition, I think that storytelling is the key to dismantling all of the power structures that exist today. When you hear the stories, you don't think of authoritarian versus person subordinate. You think of individual versus individual. You think of perspective versus perspective. And I think that allowing people to dive into the perspectives and dive into the history behind their existence is such a powerful way to be able to understand or get a glimpse of the things that are in the minds of people in our community. And I think that one of the things that has been a culture in our society is telling marginalized communities to close their mouths and to be seen and not heard, and seen as little as possible. And so snatching that narrative away from those who tend to take it from us is a act of revolution without question. And a lot of the times, ExFabula prioritizes affinity spaces so that those voices are heard by demand without question. I think that it's very important to be able to create those affinity spaces so that folks who are always under the gaze of people who tend to assume power over them are able to truly and authentically be themselves completely. I really appreciate being a part of this space. Before I joined ExFabula, I could not tell you what a radically inclusive environment is. I could not say out loud that I was a queer Black woman without feeling a certain amount of shame. And I think that telling these stories and being able to say openly and out loud in front of people who look like me and who speak like me and who share similar experiences as me is really eliminated that amount of shame. So I truly appreciate this space, and I truly appreciate being a part of this work.
Thank you, Nicole and Michaela. And Michaela, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and transparent in your sharing. And thank you all. It is really interesting not only to hear about the work that you all are doing in our city, but also to hear about how you think about how we can bridge difference and create a stronger community. I'd like to open this up a bit and have us talk about the city and like what is the work that actually needs to be done. I feel like we started out the conversation, and Fran, I think you said this in your remarks, and Reggie, I think you mentioned it too, is that we've always been somewhat divided, but right now there's a narrative in our country that we're uber divided, that there's this new level of divisiveness that we're dealing with, but that may not actually be the case. So when we think about what it takes to actually build empathy and connect us as individuals and build understanding across our city, and you think about what are the real barriers to that, what comes up for you guys? And Fran and Reggie, I'm gonna go back to you guys to start us off.
Well, I think it starts with each of us making a decision to get out of the bubbles that we live in. You know, we think about segregation in Milwaukee, we typically think about residential segregation, but we're segregated in terms of where we shop, where we play, where we worship. Our entire lives are segregated, and we don't spend enough time inside the bubbles that other people occupy. So I made a conscious decision a number of years ago to get out of my bubble and get to know people in different communities. And it's been just really a life-changing event for me to reach out to people from different faith-based communities, people from different racial and ethnic communities, getting to know people in the LGBTQ plus community, really taking myself and saying, okay, I know that I have these specific biases against different groups because I haven't spent enough time around folks. And I wanted to build genuine relationships in those spaces. And what it does is it helps to melt away those biases that we have. You get to know people that you didn't know, and now you begin to see them as those individuals instead instead of being a stereotypical member of a specific community. And that's what we try to teach people, is that you have to get to know people. You have to get into spaces where you may feel uncomfortable. In order to develop a level of comfort, you have to go through some discomfort in the first place.
In order to be unified, you have to repair things first. I mean, a limp apology doesn't do it. You have to really understand what the traumas have been. You really need to know the facts. There needs to be truth telling in order to move forward. And we need an acknowledgement that we need to change. And one of the things that Reggie and I have been talking about is that it's not the nation that's divided, it's white people that are divided. And white people are not everybody in this nation. So one of the things I think we need to do is to those of us who are allies or accomplices or whatever you want to call us, is we need to be more comfortable about acknowledging that out loud. We have a lot of peers. As Reggie said, when we travel around predominantly white Wisconsin, we find a lot of great people who are, really questioning what's happening, and they just want more information, and but they're afraid to share this with each other. So we need to be out as accomplices and talk to each other. Just like when you go to the doctor, the first thing a doctor will do to diagnose your problem is ask you for a family history. We need to be talking about our family history, all of it. Mm-hmm. And so, that's where I think unity can start. First, we need to get ourselves as white people, release our fears. Our mentor, Dr. James Cameron, Reggie and I both knew, he used to say, let freedom-loving white people breathe some fresh air. And us freedom-loving white people need to be not only breathing it, but helping other people to get that fresh air as well.
Mm-hmm. You guys both talked about kind of the fear and discomfort that comes along with that, right? So Reggie, you talked about being outside of your bubble, and Fran, I think for white people sometimes, and for everybody, that there really is a fear and discomfort about acknowledging some of our hurtful past and figuring out how to move forward. Everybody, when you think about like what we can do to help people move past that fear and past the discomfort, what comes up for you? Pardeep, Tania, Alita, anybody jump in?
I have some thoughts. So to me, it's really about understanding that there is privilege in every identity. I am a cisgendered woman. And so while there are ways that I can be considered marginalized because I am Black and queer, I am cisgendered. So I have a certain amount of privileges over people of the trans experience. I am able-bodied, so I have certain privileges over people with disabilities. And so understanding that it's my responsibility to do the work to break down the biases that are preconditioned, that I am raised to have, that are generational. And also thinking about the fact that it's not about me, and it's not folks who I have privilege over's responsibility to educate me or do the work for me to disinstall the hatred that is inside of me or the bias that exists inside of me. When I think about fear, I think about the levels. I think about what I would have to lose by not being transphobic. And even though it might be scary to challenge people in my family who have certain biases, people in my community who have certain biases, what do I have to lose besides my reputation? Besides things that stroke my ego, besides things that make me feel a certain way about myself, as opposed to someone of the trans experience who is in fear of their lives, in fear of their safety, in fear of relationships with people who make them feel validated and loved. I think of the fear of white people and what they have to lose, and it's money, it's friendships, it's things that are so, to me, not as deep as lives and safety and rights and homes and all the things. And so just realizing that while yes, it is very scary, it's worth the risk.
Thank you, Michaela. Anybody have any thoughts about what Michaela shared?
I'll kind of co-sign what Michaela is saying over here, but also saying that I think we fear making making mistakes, and so we're always like, even myself as a brown woman, like in my own brown communities, like I fear making mistakes of saying something wrong or, you know, rubbing someone the wrong way and things like that. And I think that we gotta give grace for mistakes. And so me personally, I'm not about cancel culture or anything like that. And so I always want to understand like where I might have made the mistake, or, you know, like just kind of like having a conversation with a person versus just like, I don't have to deal with this. Like, I'm gonna live my life, how I'm gonna live my life, and then move on. That's not how we build community. And it actually divides community. So yeah, I think the fear of making mistakes is kind of where we're like get hung up on a lot.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you all. And I think it's the fear that keeps a lot of people from coming out and even taking the chance to grow inside of kind of these new spaces that we're creating. Pardeep, what you said earlier about a spiritual evolution, I feel like I heard some of that in what Michaela was sharing around, you know, people are scared about their ego and reputation, and kind of how do we get people to move past the fear of those things and really start to lean into kind of a bigger growth opportunity?
I think this great question. I think the fear is healthy. I was talking to a young man at Marquette yesterday. He was wrestling with a little bit of guilt that, you know, of things that he's done in the past, and really just getting to a place where he wanted to put it all away. And I asked him, I said, can you keep some of it? Can you keep 25% of it? Not so much so that it weighs you down, but enough that you learn from the mistakes that maybe you have made, and you can be a better man as you go forward. I think that there's a lot to be learned from all of those feelings, as long as we kind of help in a healthy way embrace it. And you know, when I'm just listening to everyone, and everyone on this call is just brilliant as we talk about storytelling, about race, about running, about education, about culture, about all of these things. And I think that the way that America really needs to move forward is create, and this is definitely true for cities, urban landscapes, to the city of Milwaukee, is that we need to create an integrated healthcare system. And when I think about that, I'm thinking about addressing all of these, you know, when clinicians think about healthcare, traditionally we've thought about it as in a diagnosis model, meaning that if this person checks off these boxes, I can diagnose them with that, and then I can get reimbursed from the insurance. And then we got into that mindset of, well, a person is having challenges when you can diagnose them, you can pathologize them. Within society, we got into another like habit of saying, well, this has nothing to do with mental health. When I'm screaming from the mountaintops of, this has everything to do with mental health. This has everything to do with building a society where healthcare is accessible, not just from a healthcare facility, but from an arts-based facility, from a theater company, from all of the work that we do, from ExFabula to nurturing diversity to the way that we show up as we run up and down a hill, and if all of that is showing up. And so if we can get better at doing that, and really, I think some of the stuff, I spent about 10 years in education, Jose, and what I found is that as important as subject matter is, if you cannot connect to that child, you're not going to be effective as an educator. And I think as we go forward, think about it from, I'm like 40 some years old now, I'm dating myself. And I look back and I say, okay, well, if my teacher gave me an assignment, I would have looked up the Encyclopedia Britannica and got as much information out of that. So my job was to expound on a limited amount of information. Take it to 2021 and you give a child an assignment, their mission is to actually find out what is healthy, what is credible, what is relevant, and decrease the amount of information that's coming in. But education looks like it used to look back in the day. It hasn't changed as much. So I think we need to evolve a system, and this system needs to be all around how do we nurture people? How do we take care of them? How do we address and be honest with our history? And how do we, we live in a country that at its DNA, at its foundation, was divisive, was fearful, was unjust, we literally had genocides for land grabs. So when you have that at your, like it's a baby that's grown up that way. And if you're not intentional about going back and saying, you know what, we need to do this deep down work, we won't get to a place. We'll just be kind of asking over and saying, we're feeling better or we're getting better. And it really won't be that way. So I think that, I think all of that work needs to be done from an integrated healthcare model.
Thank you, Pardeep. I feel like that young people, I'm also in my 40s, also dating myself, but feel like that young people have a completely different approach and openness to the stigmas or the lack of stigmas around mental health, and just a different lens on inclusivity. Jose, what have you seen in working with young people that gives you hope for like all of this about how we're talking about what we want to see in our future?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, one of the things that we really have strived to work with here, especially because we have such a diversity of students, is making sure that we have those spaces, right, where students are able to, communicate and work with each other. Because I think part of the biggest issue in society is really this whole notion of the fear of the other, right? So we always kind of have that fear, right? So I think being able to step out of that space so that we can have conversations with each other and really understand how much more we have in common, so that we can have that common ground. I think it's absolutely critical. I've been involved in the community for quite a bit. So I was part of the Dreamer movement because I grew up undocumented. So for me and for us, as we were going through the process of fighting for DACA and everything else, I think what was really, what we got to an understanding of is that we needed to step out of our communities and really engage with the other, right? And really engage with people who did not see us as humans, right? And that's just kind of the reality, right? I think it's easy to dehumanize someone when you don't know much about them, when you don't engage with them. I think it becomes more difficult if you're able to engage with them and you're able to show them and really have that conversation and that dialogue and are able to break down those walls. So I think, as we went through, given kind of my background, as we went through that movement, right, we realized very quickly that the best way for us to really push for and make DACA a reality was really through having those conversations. Because I think it's, like I said, what we're hearing in the media and what we still hear in the media and then just in different areas is the whole notion of the illegals, right? Or just dehumanizing people that way. And again, for us, it was really important to do that. So bringing it back to education, I think for us within South, we really have strived to work to create those spaces where our students' cultures are validated, right? And that they're that we're creating that space not just so that they're validated, but that they're celebrated, and that their humanity is celebrated, and that they're able and creating spaces within the school where they can come together after school, for example, through all the different programs that we have, and really kind of work and support one another through the partnerships, the different partnerships that we've been able to get has been critical. So I think just creating and having those spaces where we're able to break down those walls, I think it's the best step that we can take to really humanize each other.
Thank you, Jose. I feel like what I'm hearing, so when we started the conversation, in my mind, I was like, we're facing some huge problems. And we are, let's be honest, facing some huge problems. But the answers from what you all are sharing are simple. We need to tell the truth about our past. We need to engage and connect with each other. Like, we just need to make more of an effort to get outside of our bubble and connect with each other and learn about each other and open up our humanity. And then we may need to make space for each other to be who we are in this world. And that's going to be, sometimes that's going to be us messing up and making mistakes. And sometimes that's going to be us being our brilliant selves. But we need to hold the space for each other to be all of who we are. So we are going to be wrapping up soon. But before I let you guys go, and just so you know, I'm really, really sad about letting you guys go. I want everyone to share just what is one thing that anyone listening to this could do to build a stronger sense of community in our city and in their lives. So if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching this, I'm like, I'm so inspired by this conversation, but what can I do? What is one piece of advice that you would give? And Tania, I'm going to start with you.
So I guess my action item would be to let's change this narrative of us being the most racist or segregated city in the country. Let's start sharing these more positive stories. I think what everybody has collectively said is about storytelling with ExFabula and us speaking out and being uncomfortable. I think now is the time, in cliche of fear. I've heard fear so many times, but forget everything and blank. So it is time to stop being so scary. Now is the time more than ever. We are young still. 40s, you're still young. We are all young, and we have like a duty to speak out. And I think we're very bold. Millennials are very bold and very brave and have a lot of courage. And I think it's time that we use that. So I'm over being scared. Like, you need to speak out. You have a colleague, you have a friend, you have a family member that is saying something that's discriminatory, prejudice. That is where you start. And then that can branch out. And stories like this, what Milwaukee Magazine is doing, this is amazing. This is a positive story. What each one of us is doing, this is positive. This is what needs to be shared, not the negativity of us being segregated and divided, because it will continue. But if people see that we have these positive stories, these great outlets, these spaces where we can feel like ourselves and we can celebrate diversity and inclusion, that is where the work begins. That is where we really become a community. That is where we start with this unity. So that's my action item.
I love it, Tania. Thank you. Alita?
Yes, thank you. I would invite folks to, if you're not already, begin doing your internal work. And what I mean by that is, investigating, getting curious about those fears, right? About those comforts, those discomforts, about that internalized racism, that internalized anti-Blackness, internalized transphobia. And it is like that internal work is hard. It can be deep, it can be dark. I support, like folks who there's many ways that we can support ourselves. One way being therapy, right? And destigmatizing that, right? I just started working with a therapist like a month ago. It's been great. Don't know why I didn't start sooner, because I was scared. But that internal work, which is also healing work, you know, we have a lot to heal. As Pardeep mentioned, like intergenerational, right? We have things to heal, and we can heal. We can heal things for our ancestors, and we can heal things for our future generations, and healing ourselves. It's all connected. It's never too late to heal. So I invite folks to be present in that journey, and we will cause harm. We have caused harm. We will do it again. And we will make mistakes. And let's just, I don't know, hold one another the best that we can. We're doing the best that we can.
Thank you, Alita. Thank you. Michaela?
Somehow I knew I was going next. I think that one change-making action plan that I live by is for marginalized folks to unapologetically celebrate themselves in a way that makes them feel liberated. I think that so often I will hear like someone condemning a Black girl for twerking, or a person of the trans experience just existing, or someone who is of the LGBTQ plus experience can be holding hands and they're like, ew, look at that. People who hate you do not want you to experience joy. And when you do experience joy, they want you to experience it in a way that makes them feel comfortable. So I think that it is so revolutionary to just exist and celebrate yourself in a way that validates how you want to live, and in a way that makes you feel loved and empowered. And so if that means getting ghetto and ratchet sometimes, and that's what you do. And if that means that you walk around unapologetically loving on the people that you love, then that's what you do, period.
Bring your whole joyful self. Thank you, Michaela. Nicole?
So I'm gonna bring my literary shiro into this, Bell Hooks. She said, whenever we heal, we strengthen community. So I truly believe, as individualistic as it seems, to take care of yourself first. Unless that happens, like, we're going out into the community where we're causing maybe more harm. And so just like Alita, I've also started therapy within the past year. And actually sharing my stories and being vulnerable on the internet with my own personal traumas helps me connect to other people. I'm not saying go and reveal all of your personal traumas on the internet. You do what's comfortable for you, but sharing our stories helps us heal. And maybe just giving voice, or like actually hearing and listening to the sound in your own body and like pushing it out of your body. Doing that with a therapist or with people that you feel safe and comfortable with. So when we all do that, when we all heal our own personal lives, I think we're safer to go out into communities and, begin the process of like healing as a whole, and building together.
Yep, I love that. Jose?
Yeah, I mean, the notion of starting internally first really resonates with me. And then, so definitely, starting internally and doing that healing internally, but then after doing that, really taking that risk and stepping outside of our comfort zones, I think it's really important. And then given that we are so segregated as a city, right, going outside of our communities and really engaging with other communities, I think it's critical.
Great. Reggie?
Well, I think we need to begin to really express a new ideal about what America should be. We've been told that we should be a melting pot where we all assimilate into the collective. I don't want that America. I want us to be more like a salad where you have all the diverse flavors and we appreciate all the diversity that we have. We don't have an aversion to diversity. We actually love the diversity. We love the differences we have in our society. And I think if we can begin to kind of think of ourselves in that way as a nation, then I think a lot of the fear that people have of different people, different groups will kind of begin to melt away, because we'll say, oh, that's perfectly okay. I like a salad better than I like, a soup, because there's just one flavor in a soup. Whereas a salad, you have multiple flavors. So I want us to embrace the diversity we have and love it and celebrate it.
Yes, yes. Fran?
Often when we speak in groups that are predominantly white, people say to us, well, how do I get to know people of color? I grew up in rural Indiana where it was pretty homogeneously white. I didn't meet anybody of color, even those people who lived in the town that I grew up next to. But we live in a really great time right now because there's so much scholarship and so much nonfiction to study, and so much, so many biographies and memoirs of people who may be different from yourself. You don't have to actually physically meet someone. I mean, if you're in a part of Wisconsin where there are very few people of color, for instance, you can read, you can watch films. I mean, now finally we have films by and about people of color, by and about other marginalized peoples in our society. So you just need to expose your brain to those things that are right there for us. One of the things that I think is really important is to look at organizations like the Movement for Black Lives, for instance, on the web. Their newsletters, you can get it every day or every week. And just expose yourself to what is real out there. I challenge people to go and read the website and get on the mailing list of the biggest civil rights movement we've probably ever had in this country and around the world, and not believe the myths that you hear about it, but actually read the platform on a regular basis so that you'll know what's going on and be able to expose your brain that has had pretty limited input about these things to a much, much wider input. And that's something you can do right now when you're in social isolation. Go for it.
Thank you, Fran. And Pardeep.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone's kind of saying as far as like, I think when we reveal, we heal. If we don't, we won't. Sometimes it's just that simple, but I don't want to make it that simple as well. I think that a lot of times Milwaukee and Metro Milwaukee, we have to understand that we're not really, we're used to running marathons, but I think that sometimes we need to make sure that we are empowering our youth and making sure that they're in leadership positions so that they can lead. I know that none of the youth need me to say, hey, you know what, let me give you a position to, but I think that oftentimes we hold power too long. And I look at the politics within Milwaukee, and I'm not picking on the mayor, I'm not picking on aldermans. Let's give some other person the ability to come in and be a leader, and really, like, the youth are so wise. And I think just going back to your just they're fresh, they're not, so each generation brings in their own sort of like renewal to what Milwaukee, and I think that where Milwaukee is right now is that some people have held on to power too long, and I think that's some of the things that we can do to get better and get healthier.
Thank you. Well, congratulations again to each one of you, and thank you for the work that you're doing in our city, and for the wisdom and insights that you shared this morning during our discussion. I feel like I have a bunch of little nuggets that I'm definitely going to carry forward. Carol, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I wonder if we have some time for questions from the attendees.